3 years ago, I got rid of everything I owned in my bedroom, in my living room, cleared out my closet, and left it all behind to start living in a van. Extremely minimally and completely solo. And now I'm making this video to hopefully support others who are thinking about going into that solo van life experience and inspire them to go for it. When I started, there were a lot of things that I didn't realize would be part of it. I think if I share some of the things that I wish I knew before starting van life solo, then you'll go into it ahead of the game and ready to take it on. So I hope this video is helpful for you, and here are some things that I wish someone had told me before I started my solo van life adventure. Let's go. One of the first things I wish somebody would have prepared me with is the mindset shifts that come with it. When I thought about van life before actually starting van life, a part of me was always wanting to do it with a partner or somebody else. And this preference likely came from seeing couples traveling that way together and seeing that on Pinterest or in movies. So there was a lot that had to happen in my mind. I had to get over the fears, self-doubts, and the idea that it would be really lonely because I would be alone. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why I was also very inspired to move forward with my solo van life adventure was because I met and saw so many other women doing it alone and empowered, and that also built up the confidence in me to give it a go. It also took the pressure off of me for wanting to find a partner to travel with, because even if you're traveling with a partner, it's a commitment. You're changing your lifestyle. So it also took a lot of pressure off of me to realize that I could do it alone if I really wanted to. It just led me to follow that inner trust, that inner gut feeling that was like, you know you want this, and you know that it will put you in a position for your highest growth. And so I knew I wanted to do it, and I knew I had to do it for myself. Even though people really questioned my choices and questioned my sanity for wanting to go live in a vehicle, I knew that it was the adventure that I wanted to choose for myself. The mindset shift is a big part of it. Fear will naturally come. Anytime you're making a bigger life choice, it could be moving across the state, moving across the city, buying a new vehicle. Fear will always come because there will always be what ifs. I think it's important to expect the fear that comes with choosing something for yourself and doing it alone especially, but you will overcome that. There are lots of benefits that outweigh the fear. And I think the best things in life are typically the scariest choices and the hardest choices to make. But if you reflect back on other big life decisions that you've made, you will recognize that more than likely they have turned out all right. The next things that I wish somebody would have told me are that there are certain logistics that if you're a planner like me, you probably drizzled on in your head, but there are a lot of logistics that you don't fully consider until you're in it. So some of those are places to park at night, the bathroom situation, how and where you store your gear and essentials that you might need for everyday living, and the van layout. So when you're in your van, and if you've built it yourself, you have the privilege of having thought about where everything is going to be, and in your mind, that layout feels really good on paper. But until you're physically living in it, you'll start to realize the little quirks and the little bits. So for example, for me, in my layout, I have a toilet that is directly under my closet. The pee drains under my van. I only use it for number ones, but my toilet slides out from underneath my closet, and then it blocks my drawer space. If I'm sitting on that toilet, it also blocks the pull-out desk. So for example, if I'm working from my van and I have my desk pulled out, like if I'm working and I need to pee, then it requires me to put my whole setup away. It takes a bit more steps to just find the comfort of using that amenity in my van. So you'll really start to notice the little quirks the more time you spend living in your van, and that's completely normal. You might also realize that some of the ways that you made the build are a little inconvenient, But this is the fun part, right? This is the part where you get to decide how you work your way around it. And I also said parking at night. So yes, there are lots of great resources and van lifers and people who have shared their best and easiest parking locations. So when you're going into it alone and start doing the thing, you feel really confident, or you might feel pretty confident about that. At least I did. I was like, yeah, I know I can always park at Walmart. I know that I can always like park on certain gas stations and stuff like that. But that's not always the case. And sometimes you will pull up to that Walmart and they'll have a sign that says no overnight parking, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and then you have to keep driving for another 30 minutes or try to look for another place to camp because it just doesn't feel safe. So know and expect that parking at night can be simple, but it won't always be what you expect. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Bathrooms and hygiene are another logistics topic that I mentioned. I showered almost every day if I had the option. Planet Fitness is always my go-to, but for whatever reason, if that might change or if there's not locations, I installed a shower in the back of my camper. There were times where I was in cities or backcountry areas where I didn't feel like I had privacy to access my outdoor shower, and I didn't have access to a Planet Fitness shower. So there were days where I would have to drive like 3 or 4 hours to get a shower if I wanted to, or maybe miss a shower. So having showers is a privilege, and I think it should be mostly easy for you to have access, but recognize that is a choice you are making by living in a van. You might not always have a shower, and that is going to be a real part of your experience. And then the last logistics topic I mentioned was how you store your gear and essentials that you use for everyday living. So when you live in a van, when you live in a vehicle, your space is very limited. I learned quickly that I kept a lot of my tools in the storage section of my van, which is the very back, but that wasn't always ideal. For example, I have a set of essential tools that I keep inside of my van now that I used to have in the back storage area. Anytime I needed to access those tools, I would have to park, pull over, open the back doors, slide out the drawers, take the tools out, and then I put them back. It just wasn't convenient. So you will learn that being savvy and creating ease for yourself when it comes to these everyday tools and essentials is ideal. I would recommend being open to flowing with what feels good instead of getting stuck in that, oh, well, it's supposed to live there mindset, how you typically might in a house. Be open and be flexible and realize that this is an even smaller house. So making things easier for yourself is key. Something I wish I knew more of when I first started living in a van solo is always trust your intuition. I'm encouraging you to reconnect with yourself and listen to your gut when you're going to new places or meeting new people. There are a lot of people you will meet on the road who are curious about the van lifestyle. And as a solo traveler, especially as a female solo traveler, just taking extra steps to keep yourself and your personal safety practices in check are very important. So every night, make sure that you have established a routine for how you lock your vehicles. Maybe that's like locking the 2 front doors, making sure the back door is locked. If you have an alarm system in your van, it's not a bad time to use that. If you have an older van, then maybe establishing some sort of alarm system is good. Another personal safety practice is being really aware of your surroundings when you are parking for the night. I think that can make all the difference if you're parking in a very busy area. So maybe giving yourself that ease of comfort and parking in an area that feels comfortable for you is good. Another safety practice that I recommend to everybody, girl or guys, van life or not, is keeping the locations private until after you leave them. It's not the safest practice, especially if you are sharing with strangers or people that you don't really know, if you don't really know their intentions. So I think it's always best to share your locations after you left and aren't camping there. Also, having a self-defense tool, just find a tool that works for you and makes you feel safe. If none of those resonate with you, find something that does, and just know that you have that as a backup, and maybe keep it in a location that is easy for you to access, or maybe keep multiple tools for yourself in the space. So yeah, just preparing yourself for whatever happens, there's nothing wrong with that. And the last thing I would say for the safety portion of things I wish people would have told me is that you have these resources available to you. I use apps like iOverlander a lot and my Google Maps, downloading the maps offline to gauge where I'm going before I lose signal. Use these apps to your advantage. They are available and they give you a point of grounding. Another thing that I wish people would have told me is that building connections when you are living on the road is actually a lot easier than I would have thought starting off initially. Like I said, when I went into the van life, I joined Facebook groups, I joined van community groups, I followed a few van life influencers who shared their experience, and it's actually easier to find and build community on the road. I will say you likely won't mesh with everyone that you meet, but when you are living on the road and it's just you, your windshield, and miles of road behind you, you will be excited to meet someone new, talk to them, get their story, and learn a little bit about them. Yeah, I remember I did the stretch of the drive from the Sacramento area to a town in Oregon. That's a pretty big stretch of drive. A lot of it is just straight highway, lots of elevation and dips. By the time I got to Oregon, I was so excited to get to the gas station, and in Oregon, they pump your gas for you. The guy came up to pump my gas, and I was excited to talk to him, and he was excited to talk to me. We were both very open because it's a lot of driving and not a lot of conversations to have. So yeah, I think there's a good balance that you will find that works for you between the time spent in solitude versus the time spent in community, and you truly do get to decide what that looks like. I mean, you always do, but when you're in a van, you have a lot more options to keep that life of solitude. When you live in a city, it's sometimes can feel a little bit harder to find that time for solitude. I know when I was living in LA for a bit, it always felt like there were events going on and chances to interact with people. It's exciting and great because it's all the activities you're super excited about, but it can also be really challenging to say no to them sometimes. There's a plethora of fun things to do. Sometimes saying no feels like fear of missing out, but it's what you got to do for yourself. And when you're living in a van, you can choose that by driving out to the mountains for a few days or staying a little bit more isolated and having your same homey comforts there with you. So another thing I wish I knew about van life and budgeting. So let's talk money, let's talk working on the road. I thought going into it, I'm probably going to save a lot of money because I'm not going to be paying rent anymore. I'm not going to be paying, same car payments or gas payments and things like that, just basic life things. But it kind of adds up. When I first started doing my van life, I started calculating how much I would spend on fuel and food, and I actually found that I was paying just $200 less than I would have been paying for rent. So I did save a significant amount of money. I was also funding my travels with my remote work, and I'm very lucky to have had that. I think traveling and funding your travel, your van life experience while not working can feel extremely stressful. Maybe it feels a little less stressful than it would if you had a required rent every month, because rent is expensive, but it's also like you're paying someone else, versus if you're living in your vehicle, if you're living in your van, then you have either paid that off or you're paying it off, but you're still paying less than the cost of living in an apartment. So, what I wish I knew about budgeting my travels. When I first started, I was really open to eating out, and that wasn't the healthiest. And I also spent a lot of money in things that probably weren't as good for me. So, just being as diligent as you are when living in a building is important to the ease and flow of funds in your van life experience. Living in a van doesn't mean it will always be more affordable. It can be and likely might be, but being aware of where your money is going and how you're staying organized financially is really important. For me, I stay organized financially through a Google Sheet. This is my own personal finance story. When I first started living in my van, I had some debts from college and credit card bills. So I put those in order on the sheet and I did something called the snowball method. So I took the interest rate for each card, how much money was on each card, and lined that up. Then I, made payments towards the ones that had highest interest rates first. And I have zero debt, which is amazing now. I owe a lot of that to my financial organization, savings, and prioritizing my freedom, financial freedom, through this van life experience as well. So I'm very grateful. And maybe that's something that can help you guys get inspired to pursue the van life. It's a good opportunity to find more financial freedom because if you're working a full-time job, you will likely be saving a good chunk of money. Another thing that I wish people would have been more open and honest about, and I think more people are honest about this now, it's not always happy times. It's not always exciting. It's really hard sometimes and emotionally draining, especially if you're doing the solo van life experiences. I know in my last video I talked about loneliness and how that impacts me, but there are moments, for example, if I got stuck in the desert, my van, it's just me and I have to go dig out my wheels myself. I have to figure out what the next steps are. And it's really easy to just in those moments, feel the overwhelm, start to cry, start to feel the self-doubt, start to ask yourself, why am I doing this again? And so you really have to be strong enough to emotionally support yourself through those moments and build a support system as well. It's good to be able to show up for yourself, but we all need a little bit of help sometimes. Solo travel will be a mirror of that, and your experiences will be teachers to how you are growing emotionally and how well you support yourself. You'll notice really quick how you show up for yourself, and that'll help you deepen your relationship in that way too. So I will leave you with that. If you are thinking about doing van life alone, you are stronger than you think. And you should go for it. If it's your dream, if it's what you think will help you grow, put yourself in that position. Do everything in your power to plan it out and make it happen for yourself. You can start slow. You can start with what I started with, which was a Pinterest board, an idea of how I want my van to be built and how I want the interior to look, and use that to motivate you to keep working towards your goal. Give yourself grace too, because it is a challenging thing to start when you are first doing it alone. There's a lot of things that will come up, things that will trigger you, things that might make you question why you're doing this. But if it's your dream and you wanted it for so long, once you're there, don't give up and find ways to support yourself. Trust the journey, right? There were so many moments and so many experiences that I had where I was just like, okay, like, why am I doing this? For example, I think I shared this in my first van video, but when I first drove my van from Florida to California, I had to put all my stuff that I had in storage there into my van. And when I first drove it, I wrecked my engine. And that was 3 weeks into having my van. I just basically started my dream and life experience there with a what the F? Why did I do this? I'm not smart. I was beating myself up for how that journey started. But you know what? If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have met my mechanic who is a sprinter expert, and there aren't too many people as knowledgeable on the T1N sprinters as him throughout the US. I've done much research, tried to meet many people everywhere, and there aren't as many people as knowledgeable on the topic as he is and how he has shown me to be throughout my experience. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have met him, and he wouldn't have helped me and encouraged me to learn how to work on my van by myself. Everything happens how it's supposed to, so just trust that journey. And don't wait until you feel 100% ready, because that will never be the case. One thing I wish somebody would have told me when I was thinking about this is you have to make progress over perfection. Nothing is ever gonna be perfect. There are never gonna be perfect conditions for you to do anything in life. It's more about starting and then going for it, and then progressively just watching it get better and feeling more confident and comfortable. It's just full trust, going into it with full trust. So don't wait till you feel 100% ready, because you never really will. So I will leave you guys with that. Thank you for joining me and watching this video. I really appreciate the support and comments and engagement, and subscribing if you haven't already always helps and keeps me motivated. I love creating community and meeting you guys. So I'm gonna actually, so if you're someone who is thinking about starting van life, I wonder what's your biggest fear and what's the limiting factor here that's stopping you from fully going for that. Let me know in the comments. And if you have any other video suggestions, I'm always open. So let me know, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.